Hey guys, welcome back. I hope you are having an amazing day. Let's get right into the stories. The first one is an entitled People Story. Coffee has been one of my lifelong passions. Ever since I was a little girl, I've loved the rich aroma of fresh roasted beans, the hiss of the espresso machine, and the satisfaction of creating a perfectly layered latte. So when I turned 25 and came into some inheritance money after my grandfather passed away, I decided to take a leap of faith. I would open my very own coffee shop, a cozy neighborhood spot where people could gather to enjoy quality coffee, baked goods, and good conversation. And that's how the Daily Grind was born. My little slice of paradise, tucked away on a tree-lined street in the suburbs. Now I should mention, I was born with a disability. My right leg is several inches shorter than my left, and I walk with a very noticeable limp. I've dealt with stares and comments my whole life, but it's never held me back from pursuing my dreams. In the early days of my shop, most customers who noticed my disability didn't seem to care. They appreciated my warm smile and gift for making the perfect macchiato, but there were a few rotten apples in the bunch, like the woman who would become known as Entitled Karen. The first time Karen came into the Daily Grind, I was wiping down the front counter, preparing for the early morning rush. When I greeted her cheerfully, she glanced down at my uneven legs and visibly recoiled, curling her lip in disgust. Is there someone else who can take my order? Someone cleaner? She asked pointedly. I bit my tongue, choosing kindness over confrontation. I'd be happy to take your order, ma'am, I said with a smile. Karen huffed impatiently, but relayed her request for an iced, skinny vanilla latte. She watched me warily the entire time I prepared her drink, as if I was contaminating it with my disability. I handed Karen her latte, wishing her a nice day. She hurried out without a thank you, letting the door slam shut behind her. Well, that first encounter set the tone for Karen's future visits. She began coming in 2 or 3 times a week, always refusing to order from me directly. If I was the only one working the counter, she'd make a dramatic show of waiting until my coworker returned from break to take her order. Karen went out of her way to avoid any physical contact with me. If I accidentally brushed her hand when passing over a receipt, she'd yank her arm back and glare at me in disgust. If I carried her drink order to her table, she'd use napkins to pick it up, as if the cup itself was diseased. She'd often make loud comments to other customers about the unsanitary conditions at the Daily Grind, and how inappropriate it was to have someone like that handling food and beverages. I noticed that the morning customers who used to greet me cheerfully now averted their eyes in discomfort when Karen was around. It was like she had poisoned the welcoming atmosphere with her bigoted attitude. But despite her nastiness, I always responded with grace and patience. My disability did not define my worth, and this hateful woman would not make me feel ashamed for embracing my dreams. However, Karen apparently did not appreciate my peaceful approach. Because one morning she marched into the Daily Grind, cell phone in hand, demanding to speak with the manager. I steeled myself for another rude comment as she stomped up to the counter in her heels. I want to speak to whoever is in charge here immediately, she announced arrogantly. I calmly set down the rag I was using to polish the espresso machine. I'm the owner and manager. How may I help you? Karen's eyes narrowed in suspicion, unwilling to believe someone like me could be in charge. Well, I don't know who hired you, but they clearly made a huge mistake putting someone in your condition in a customer service role, she spat out. I stood up straighter, refusing to cower before her insults. My disability does not affect my ability to make coffee and provide good service, I said evenly. Karen let out a harsh bark of laughter. Are you kidding me? It's completely inappropriate and disgusting having to see, well, someone like you touching food and drinks. You shouldn't even be allowed to work here. Her words cut deep, but I didn't let it show. I had dealt with prejudice my whole life. This hateful woman would not break me. Karen went on to threaten filing a lawsuit, wanting to force me to step down. She waved her phone in my face, yelling that she had already called her lawyer. Something in me snapped. I would not tolerate this harassment a minute longer. Get out, I said quietly. You are banned from ever stepping foot in my coffee shop again. Karen looked momentarily stunned. Then her face contorted in rage. How dare you? You have no right to treat me this way. I'm going to call the health department and every newspaper in town and tell them how disgustingly unsanitary this place is, she shouted. I stepped out from behind the counter, hands firmly on my hips, and looked Karen dead in the eyes. Enough. This is my business that I built through years of hard work. You come in here every week with your entitled attitude, insulting me, making a scene because you're small-minded and prejudiced. But no more. Get out now. Karen stumbled back, clearly not expecting me to stand up to her. For a moment she just stared at me furiously, clenching and unclenching her fists. My adrenaline was pumping, but I stood my ground. Finally, Karen turned on her heel and marched out, pausing to sweep half the items on the front counter onto the floor in a last act of pettiness. I took a deep, steadying breath as the door swung shut behind her. Over the next few days, I kept waiting for some kind of retaliation from Karen. But a week passed without incident. My loyal regular customers were as friendly and welcoming as ever. If anything, they seemed relieved that Karen was finally gone. A month later, I was pulling a fresh batch of blueberry muffins out of the oven when my phone rang. It was my lawyer, Jim. He had helped me set up the Daily Grind years ago. "Hey, Jim, what's up?" I asked, balancing the phone between my shoulder and ear. "Well, I have some interesting news," Jim said. "Remember that lovely lady Karen who harassed you a while back?" I rolled my eyes. "Oh, yes. What about her?" "Turns out Karen actually went through with her threat to sue," Jim explained. "She filed a discrimination lawsuit against the Daily Grind for failing to accommodate her celiac disease. Said you refused to make gluten-free baked goods." My jaw dropped in shock. This woman didn't have celiac. She just wanted to punish me for standing up to her. "Well, in the course of my investigation," Jim continued, "I found out that Karen has actually filed nearly a dozen fraudulent lawsuits against small businesses over the past few years, using fake disability claims." "What?" I gasped. "That's horrible." "It is," said Jim grimly, "especially when she specifically targets owners with real disabilities like yourself. Anyway, I had a chat with the district attorney, and they are going after Karen for disability discrimination fraud. Just thought you'd want the heads up in case you get contacted." "Jim, that's the best news I've heard in ages," I cried in relief. "Thank you so much." We chatted a few more minutes before I had to get back to the midday rush. But I couldn't stop smiling. Justice was finally being served. Karen thought she could intimidate and bully me just because I was different. She failed to realize that my disability was only part of who I am, and that I'm stronger than she could ever imagine. In the end, her own hate and intolerance were what brought her down. She lost the power to destroy lives the day I found the courage to stand up and say enough. And for that, I will always be proud. The next one is a pro-revenge story. So this happened when I was 14-15. My mother was married to a man who had an adult son from a previous marriage. I think he was in his mid-20s. He lived the hippie life, literally on the streets by choice, and about once a year or so, he would hitchhike his way to our house with his friends, do copious amounts of laundry and weed, and generally just take over as if it was their house. They even left the gas burners on once because they forgot they turned the stove on. Anyhow, like any teenage girl, I was obsessed with my clothes. I had laundry sitting in the dryer, including these awesome corduroy pants I'd only worn once. Stepbro and his friends are doing laundry, and instead of doing something normal like moving my stuff aside or putting it in my room, they decide, "Oh man, it would be so dope to cut these up and make like a sweet cape." So that's what they did. I saw Stepbro wearing this cape and recognized the material. "Are those my pants?" I exclaimed. They were in the laundry, man, you know, like finders keepers. I was furious, and his dad wouldn't do anything about it. My mom was pissed because she had just bought these for me and they were pricey. Mom didn't like this annual visit anyhow, but to keep her marriage, she put up with it. I wanted to get back at Stepbro, but he had nothing of value because of his lifestyle. Then I remembered I overheard my parents fighting, and my mom had mentioned Stepbro had gotten a girl pregnant, and the kid was like 2 years old, and he hadn't so much as given the girl a penny, or even seen the child since it was born. So the next day, my parents were at work, Stepbro was hanging out, listening to music or something. I decided to call the cops. I wasn't sure what to say, but I told the dispatcher I knew of someone who might have a warrant out for failure to pay child support. Now, before you say, how would a teenager know about that? Well, my birth father is a demon and was at one point nearly arrested for that same offense. The dispatcher asked the name of the person. I gleefully gave Stepbro's name, and they confirmed there was, in fact, a warrant out for him. I gave my address and waited. 20 minutes later, cops roll up. They knock, and I let them in and lead them right to him. "He's right here, officers." I couldn't stop smiling. They cuff him and take him off to jail. An hour later, my mom calls the house after stepbro had used his phone call to call his dad, and I tell her exactly what I did. She whispered, "Good job," but then pretended to loudly reprimand me as she was with stepdad. Stepdad couldn't get the fine and bail money together fast enough, so stepbro had to sit in jail overnight. It still makes me happy 20 years later to remember seeing him being taken away in a cop car. My mom luckily divorced that a-hole and is now married to a very nice man. Edit. OMG, thank you for the gold and platinum. I didn't know that was a thing. I had no idea this would blow up. I was just procrastinating from my studying and decided to write down this lovely memory. I've tried to read most of the comments, so I'll answer all that I can here. No, I never got new pants. Yes, he cut them up the legs and used them as the middle part with other fabric to make his cape. I think he tried sewing, but may have turned to the hot glue gun. Dude was high like 24/7. As others said, this wasn't the only thing stepbro did to me. He did many other terrible things, including tearing down my posters and accidentally lighting my comforter on fire. I was at summer camp. He was staying in my room without my knowledge. Also, letting my dog free like his dog that's probably the worst thing he did to me personally, as doggos equal sign life. This was my mother's third marriage. Nice guy she's with now is #4. So yes, we're all very dysfunctional. And no, whoever said if I get married and my husband cheats, watch out. For obvious reasons, I don't believe in marriage. 20 years ago, the cops did tell you if someone had a warrant of that nature. Someone else pointed out this is child support, so it's national. I don't know how the laws are now in terms of privacy. Stepbro is part of the Rainbow family. I don't know if he's still alive or anything. Haven't seen him since that incident. After he was bailed out, stepdad gave him some cash, and he got out of town. I hope the little girl turned out okay. All I know is her mom was also one of the Rainbow people, and after the pregnancy went back to live with her parents. The next one is a petty revenge story. Some backstory. I come from a very abusive household. I tried to make things work for years with my family, but ended up going no contact a few years ago. There was never compromise, and my physical and mental health hit rock bottom due to them being the source of almost all my stress. They are racist, homophobic, narcissistic, entitled people, my sister being the worst. I was the family workhorse, responsible for car repairs, lawn maintenance, housework, cooking, cleaning, you name it. I was told to do it all and scolded if I had anything else to do or wanted to do. They would berate me at any chance they got, and they continue to do so now. I know this all comes from a place of deep trauma and damage, but I don't think that excuses their actions as fully matured adults who have made their decisions in life. My sister was the golden child of the family. She would get away with everything, and I had all the responsibility and abuse. She then grew up to be a near-carbon copy of our parents. I won't go too far into specifics, but one day I finally had enough of it all and cut all communication, aside from one family member who could get us in contact for an absolute emergency, in which I was legally required to be involved out of courtesy. When I cut contact, I asked for the keys to my house back from my sister. She refused and said, "Come get them yourself, then." Whenever I would try, it would turn into gaslighting and a screaming match, and I wouldn't get them back. I ended up giving up and changing all the locks. A month ago, my sister contacted me through that family member. She had a baby, and has found a newfound interest in Jesus, wanting her son baptized. She had only ever gone to church out of obligation, never of her own free will. Cue the pettiest, but honestly most satisfying revenge I could have ever had. She asked for her baptism records from me, as our mother had sent them to me years earlier for safekeeping. I honestly had not seen the paper in years, so when she asked, I honestly said, "I haven't seen it in years, but I can look. If you mail me back my keys, I'll consider looking." This girl blew up like you could not imagine, losing her mind, saying I am holding her records hostage, and how much of a derogatory name I am. But at no point does she accept just mailing the keys. She tells me how I am now stopping her son from being baptized. I just replied, "That all sounds like a you problem. Contact the parish that did the baptism and get a new one then." The last thing she wrote to me was, "Go duck yourself." It's been nearly a month since then, and I still don't have the keys, and I don't care. I found the record a week ago while cleaning out old boxes, and I genuinely thought of just tossing it, but the smile on my face thinking about how unbelievably angry that Karen of a sister I have must be, I may hold on to it just a little bit longer. What do you think, friends? The next one is a malicious compliance story. I work in a transportation facility that requires me to go through a security checkpoint for bag inspections and passing through a metal detector. They ask us to remove any electronics or wires from our bags. As a technician, I carry a laptop, network cables, and some small hand tools in my bag. I was told I could leave the hand tools in the bag, but the wires and electronics had to be taken out. Fine, so I've been doing this for months until yesterday. I went through the usual routine, unpacking my bag of the required items and placing them in the bin to be scanned. Then I sent my bag through. The X-ray showed nothing suspicious, so I began to reload my bag. At this point, the X-ray operator stopped chatting with her coworkers and realized she had to get to work. She started going through my bag, taking out everything I had just put back in, and told me, "This is supposed to come out and go in a bin." I replied, "I did that. You weren't paying attention." Undeterred, the X-ray operator then informed me, "Anything metal has to come out. Everything has to come out." "Fine," I said. Today rolled around and the same person was operating the X-ray machine, so I took all my usual stuff out of the bag and placed it in a bin. Then I started removing everything from my bag one by one. Tissue pack, check. Quick wipes, check. Pens, check. Candy wrapper from 3 days ago, check. You get the point. Every single item I pulled from my bag. Meanwhile, the X-ray operator was getting testy and a line was forming behind me. She told me I was holding up the line, to which I responded, "Sorry, you said everything." After my bins and empty bag went through the X-ray and came out, I began repacking everything while keeping an eye on the line behind me. A guy behind me started doing the same thing I just did, pulling everything from his bag. He said, "You did tell that guy everything. I don't want to get in trouble." The next guy behind him followed suit. As I set my bag on the floor and began to walk away, I turned to the X-ray operator and said, "You did say everything. Have a nice day," and left. I think I might go back through after lunch. Clarification: this is a security checkpoint for employees of the transportation facility. It's operated by a private security company and not a government transportation security agency, though most of the employees act like they work for the government. The next one is an entitled people story. I totally neglected to check on my post for the last few days, and it seems I angered the Reddit gods. This post was removed, so I revised the title, hoping that will appease them. As I stated before, life has been pretty great, except for what I'm about to post here. Just a little update on me and my kids. We're all doing well. I'm still with my boyfriend Kyle, and we're enjoying a meaningful, loving, and wild relationship. I'm no longer a dancer, as I had to have some surgery on my lower back to fix a spinal issue that I had been dealing with for a number of years. Due to some in-house drama at the club, I decided to quit. Nothing post-worthy, as it really had nothing to do with me personally. I now work from home again, but I'm still good friends with everyone at the club. Anyway, that's about it for the update. On to the insanity. Well, as you saw by the title, you might have a clue. I got a phone call a month ago, and it was told to me that my mother, who I call BLZidiot, passed away in prison from a stroke. At first I didn't care. I told them that it was their problem, not mine, but my attitude changed when they told me that I was entitled to some inheritance. That threw me for a loop. BLZidiot never had a will. So whatever she had in finances and assets was to be split between me and my 2 siblings. Apparently she has been dead for over 4 months, and I was only just informed about it. Trippy. I became unhinged when I heard the number. From the deaths of my grandparents, this idiot was sitting on nearly $500K. I had assumed she squandered the money to pay for her own bullcrap during the years I still lived with her, which was why she always demanded money from me. But no, she never touched it and just lived off Social Security, whatever she could get from relatives, and my income up until I moved out. I was seething. Not only did she have the money to pay her own bills, but she took so much money from me over the years and all of the bullcrap she put me through, all because of her own greed and narcissism. I was furious. In total, she had the $500K, the house, and my grandparents' house and assets. A lawyer was assigned to her estate recently to work everything out, and she spoke to my siblings about their shares. Because they are also in jail, they want me to be the one to handle it all, so I had to take time off work and go back to my old state to handle everything. I visited my siblings in jail and we talked. They both acknowledged that BLZidiot had destroyed their lives in many ways and manipulated them into treating me like crap. I learned the reason behind why BLZidiot had it out for me. I was the only one that worked hard to succeed in life. My siblings were both lazy and just gave in whenever she snapped her fingers. Not me. I was the better child and she resented me for it. She saw I was going to surpass her in life and it bothered her. She did love my son, but it was a love that was built on a foundation of jealousy and bitterness that she felt for me. Not healthy. I chose to have her cremated as I wasn't going to plan some elaborate funeral for the woman who tried to destroy my life and kidnap my kid. Her ashes were dumped into the nearest body of water, eliminating her from existence. Farewell, Beelzadiot. My siblings asked me to hold their shares until they were released. They both apologized and said they won't be a bother to me once they are. I told them it was no trouble and that I forgive them. Maybe we can work on some form of a familial relationship once they are out. Maybe. I'm very skeptical. I decided to give them both the houses and their shares of the money once they are free. I have no desire to live in my old state again so close to my ex-husband. I set up a bank account and put their shares into it, and it'll sit there until they are free. The house keys are in a safety deposit box at the bank, along with the house deeds and some other heirlooms I don't want for myself. I was able to go into my old house and collect a few things I had left behind when I moved. On to the drama. A few of my relatives had learned about Beelzadiot dying and filed in small claims court to sue me for a cut of the inheritance. Apparently Beelzadiot had borrowed a lot of money from them and never paid it back, so they were going to go after me for it. The judge dismissed their cases because there was no contract, and because Beelzadiot is dead, there was no way to determine if their claims were true or not. If they had simply asked me, I would have given them some of the money, but now, because they tried suing me, I'm keeping the cash out of spite. One of them even tried to get their claim on Judge Judy, but it didn't work. I guess Judge Judy had better crap to do. LOL, no woman. I will not appear on national television so you can get some petty revenge against me for something my mother did. Duck you. This relative who is a cousin has been all over Facebook, threatening me for the better part of a week. She is making claims against me that I am abusing my children, threatening to call CPS, that I stole from her, and a bunch of other crap that the other relatives are trying to question me over. I sent her a very direct message that if she didn't tell the truth, I would be sending the screenshots to her employer and filing against her in small claims court. I reminded her that her case was thrown out because she can't get blood from a turnip. Beelzadiot borrowed money. Sorry, but that isn't my problem. She was forced to tell the truth, and now many of my relatives won't talk to her. Mind you, most of them are crappy, so they get no points for the minor amounts of integrity. I'm back home now and ready to continue on with my life like this last month didn't happen. People are crazy. Anyway, see you all on the flip side, Reddit fam. Thank you for watching. I would really appreciate it if you could like the video and subscribe to our channel if you haven't already. We'll see you again tomorrow.